Hello and welcome to our webcast series Spotlight on the Digital Twin. My name is Chris Brau, and in this series, Siemens experts will use examples of various applications to demonstrate how you in the food and beverage industry can benefit from digitalization, and how production facilities and processes can be optimized and designed more efficiently and economically. Everything practice-based, solution-oriented, and grounded in reality. Today our focus is on product design. Let's welcome our expert, Frank Brandau. Frank?
Chris, nice to see you.
It's good to have you here. How are you?
Very good.
Great. First, tell us a bit about your work. What do you do at Siemens?
My name is Frank Brandau, and I'm a solution director responsible for the consumer goods industry, and I work on new and exciting global solutions.
Can you tell us about the challenges and opportunities that are offered and created by digitalization? For example, the digital factory is no longer just a buzzword like it was a few years ago. Now it's a reality. What can you tell us about that?
That's a very important topic, and certainly worth explaining. We've developed an innovative concept at Siemens. In trying to understand what digitalization actually is, we've come to understand it as the digital twin of a product and the digital twin of production, and together they create the digital enterprise, which encompasses every facet of the information that emerges from these processes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this rather traditional industry hasn't been exactly known for its innovations in manufacturing, has it?
Yes and no. Of course, a traditional company with a traditional brand has to be able to shape how it's represented on the market. But in actual practice, beneath the surface, there's all sorts of information. The fact is that the market is changing drastically. New elements are being incorporated, and consumers are also changing dramatically.
And which of these factors affect the manufacturers and the manufacturing process?
There are various focus areas. Naturally, I'd like to learn how I can use my digital twin to become more efficient, but I also want to be able to cater to new market demands. In other words, the market requires that I ask, where do specific raw materials come from, and how does production affect the environment? What legal requirements apply here? These are all factors that conflict with one another and need to be managed with the digital twin.
Would you say that large companies have the advantage? Or is it the smaller companies that can respond more quickly?
Both reap tremendous benefits here. You can't categorize it that way, that solutions are only for large or small companies. They're simply different starting points. Naturally, a large company has a correspondingly large number of brands and products on the market and has a large selection of products that are basically already prepared. And the digital twin can enable the company to reuse these things. A smaller company may not have the same position on the market, but it can fill niches much more easily by asking, how is the market trending? In what direction is it moving? And how can I get there the most efficient way?
So the size of the company isn't crucial.
Not at all, you're right.
So both benefit equally from digitalization. Can you please tell us a little more about the influencing factors? Aside from the consumers, who naturally play a tremendous role, what else contributes?
To be able to answer that, we first have to look at what actually comprises the digital twin. The twin doesn't just contain the product itself, it includes many different aspects. We have the formula that makes up the product itself, and then we have the packaging and the artwork. And all this needs to be passed on to production. And it's usually the case that production processes differ, meaning that we have different factories that produce this product. Each one expects the products to be adapted to local conditions and to local consumers, with the result that a manufacturer has to manage a huge amount of information and processes.
The whole thing sounds incredibly complex. You have to maintain an overview, right?
That's our goal, to maintain an overview. That's exactly the approach. We want to achieve full transparency, and not just for the manufacturer who can ask, is there an opportunity for me on the market that's becoming especially interesting, or that has temporarily surfaced, and that I can take advantage of? Of course, I can also extend this to the consumer, who will acquire much better insight into the question, what's behind this product? What's behind this brand? Now it's no longer an anonymous product on the shelf, and I can relate to it very differently.
Can you please summarize this? How will I actually benefit from digitalization as a manufacturer?
Digitalization benefits me at several points. First of all, it makes me much better able to reuse information. In other words, if I want to make a new version of something I've already developed, I don't have to start from scratch, but can actually take what's already been made and use it well and efficiently.
Especially a large company.
Yes, as a large company, that's very, very important because I want to launch lots of different versions on the market. The next point is that I avoid repeating work that I've already done. A good example is a product line that needs to look very uniform on the shelf, so the products should all have the same layout.
Of course.
The digital twin immediately gives me a standard layout for this brand, and I just have to apply it and position my other elements inside it. That makes it much easier for me, instead of having to redevelop the layout, which is how it usually works in actual practice. The next point is that I can complete the process much more quickly because I can use information as soon as it's generated.
That's another good example. To summarize, digitalization enables faster response time, shorter development cycles, and ultimately, faster market maturity.
Yes, exactly.
Let's look at it all again a little more closely and go into a little more detail. How does this kind of production look in practice? What exactly happens when this kind of change is made to an ongoing process?
First of all, a product manager wants to identify a new market based on observations such as what's currently in, what's in fashion, what's trending. This results in a certain range of ideas. At this point, you don't really want to throw out everything that's already been done. You want to build on what you already have. A great example is a company that makes a series of beverages saying, I already have several basic versions on the market, and now I'd like to create new, trendy versions.
Can I pick something?
Go ahead.
How about lime, ginger, lychee?
I'm pretty sure that's not popular on the market yet, but that's precisely the point. Why not cater to the individual consumer and launch exactly that version on the market? It may involve a certain amount of expense, but if I don't need to do a lot of work to implement it, I can cater to such interests.
Why not?
The brand can grow tremendously because it becomes much more attractive. Each person says, I have a brand new connection. My own taste is included. Very positive for the individual.
Can you give us a few more details? I believe you've prepared something.
Yes, I have.
Then let's go see. So, Frank, I'm looking forward to hearing the details. What comes next?
Chris, I've prepared a wonderful example for you. Imagine that we have a product line consisting of various milk drinks with different flavors like chocolate and blueberry, and we have a secret weapon. That's our orange mango. I know that I already have these products on the market, so now I can figure out how much of a profit I'm making on each individual flavor. Maybe I discover that they're all currently about the same. But what's important for us isn't what we're already doing, but what we'll be doing in the future. If I now discover that consumers are headed in a different direction, and a certain flavor is currently popular or part of a trend, then I'll want to take advantage of that. But the time frame for doing this might be very short. I may only have a few months in which to take advantage of this trend that's just emerging.
But as we just saw, thanks to digitalization, our response time is much faster.
Exactly.
What should I do once I've realized that, hey, orange mango is the flavor of the future?
Flavor of the future is a good way to put it. And in the future, we'll want to use the digital twin. At this point, it's a matter of optimally coordinating the entire company, the machinery that's now being set in motion. I can't redo work that's already been done before. Instead, I have to focus on reusing what I've already achieved. I have to avoid steps that might even be unnecessary and concentrate on exactly what I want to achieve.
What does this graphic tell us? That several processes are running in parallel, right?
Right. That's of course the big trick to the whole thing. If I work sequentially, which always used to be the case, I always have to wait for what the person ahead of me in the chain has developed and wait for it to be released and communicated. Those are all huge tasks. That's just where the digital twin comes to my rescue. I can actually access this information as it's being created. I can say, we've developed a new list of ingredients from the formula. We've defined the packaging, where the label can be applied, and the people who need it can work with this information before it's been released, meaning that as soon as these things are created, I can immediately use them. That saves me a lot of time.
And what tools do I have now that will finally get me to my desired end product? What else is involved?
There's also a tremendous opportunity to test out a few things in the virtual space. That's the way it works today. The laboratory is still incredibly important. At some point, these people have to develop samples and conduct taste tests. Things like that.
And you've been doing this for some time? You already know about all these things?
I know them all very, very well. Yes, exactly. And that will continue to be important in this form. But to really pick up speed, I also have to learn to use the information I already have. Let's say I now want to generate a new version of my orange mango. Maybe a version for winter when sweet might be preferred, and a version for summer when I'd rather the taste be tangy and refreshing. Then it's just a matter of slight variation. But I want to be able to say, let's use the same packaging, but we have to change the artwork because my list of ingredients needs to be modified. And I have to create this version of the formula. You can already see how we're reusing lots of information and are able to concentrate on just these small changes. What the virtual twin then allows me to do is to actually simulate things and say, I have different amounts of my materials in these products. Do I want to use more milk? Do I want to use more flavor carriers or change the amount of fruit? I can simulate all of that in order to see whether I can actually come up with something that I want to use later on. A dairy product that tastes good and the consumer finds refreshing.
And these are real values, more or less?
They fit pretty well.
Yes, I see.
At this point, it might be really helpful to try out different versions using what-if analyses.
You may have to tell us what you mean by that.
Sure. I need to be able to look at the content of my product in detail. What if lets me do this? Let's say there's a certain amount of fruit in my beverage. What if I slightly increase the amount of fruit, and what if I reduce it? I want to be able to compare these changes because, after all, it's a drink, and it has to be drinkable. The flow rate, the viscosity, plays an incredibly huge role. I can't modify everything randomly, but the digital twin is a tremendous help at this point. Because before I actually begin trying out all of these versions and setting them up in the laboratory, I can say, I'll vary the amounts of these individual ingredients slightly, and then I'll calculate. What do I then get as a specification for my overall product?
Okay, and now for our new drink. The result is basically orange mango based on the new values. Are they actually based in reality?
They're absolutely based in reality, yes.
And these values have to appear on the packaging, right?
Exactly.
So now we come to the artwork.
Right. That's the next step in the digital twin. For us, a very, very important part of this chain. This information is from the lab and must be printed correctly on the packaging. And we all know that in matters like this, there can also be last-minute changes. And the digital twin has to ensure that we always have the most accurate representation of these values on the packaging.
So now let's take a look at it.
Let's.
Our topic is now artwork and packaging design. Why is that so complex? I mean, it's just a label, right? oder?
You can't really say just a label. The label is one of the most complex elements of today's consumer products. It's supposed to convince consumers to buy the product while also providing them with the information they need to make their decision. In other words, everything we just saw, the list of ingredients, all the various factors that this involves, has to be reused here. But it isn't just that the list of ingredients has to be on it. I also have a choice of different symbols that I need to add, depending on the market requirements. There are various preset positions where these things have to appear. It's also extremely important that I'm able to represent my own brand, that I use certain preset colors, that I use the associated logos and symbols, that I represent myself as a company, as well as this product line. It's much more complex than just a label.
There's definitely a lot more to it.
Yes, and I'm very happy to say that we've brought along someone who can show you in more detail. Here's Matthias.
Hi. Chris.
Frank, very good. Perhaps you could show us a little more about our product. We were just talking about colors, and a great example popped into my head. Our Siemens petrol color as the true representation of our brand.
I'd be happy to. The Siemens petrol color is world famous, and the actual color code for the Siemens color is Pantone 321C.
I'd like to point out how important colors are. In this industry, colors are as important as shapes and logos. Consumers stand in front of the shelves and associate actual brands with these colors. If the colors differ slightly from what they're used to, or what they associate with the brand, they may actually subconsciously decide not to buy. In other words, they stand there, they sense that something is slightly off, and they don't buy. That's obviously something we want to avoid.
Definitely, I can see that. People are ultimately creatures of habit.
Exactly. And how we use that. Matthias, I think you have something to say about that.
Yes. We've used the data from the digital twin to develop a plugin for Adobe's Illustrator and InDesign products. And now I'll show you what we can do with them. For example, we can immediately add the color books we predefined, meaning the colors that are predefined and need to always be used for the brand. The same with our logo that we've saved. Once it's in the digital twin, we're always certain that it's the latest logo and that we're using the latest version, with, of course, the right color code, which we can use for the logo as well as for things like the nutrition table. After we get the nutrition table, which we might get from a research and development department that's located in a completely different part of the world, we're not necessarily informed if any changes have been made. Let's say that it's been changed to a diet drink and the carbohydrates have been reduced. The designer focuses on designing the appropriate label, which means a label that convinces the customer to buy this product. The nice thing is that if there's been a change in the nutrition table or list of ingredients, we're informed via the digital twin and can simply replace the label in the plugin with the press of a button and bring it up to date. We can also see whether the data supplied has already been released, whether this really is the final version of the label. This frees the designer from the burden of being the last one in the chain, holding everything up. Until the designer's finished, the product cannot be released. So regardless of whether the information is 100% accurate or has been verified, the designer can still start working, right? Absolutely right.
At this point, we need to emphasize that the digital twin containing all the information on my product and its subsequent production can be used immediately, which allows the designer to focus on what he or she actually needs to do. Be creative, make the product attractive, and of course, convince consumers to buy it. The digital twin almost completely eliminates all the tasks involved with making sure I have the latest version, making sure that it's all been released, and frees our designer to do what they're actually supposed to do: design.
Super, that sounds great. Thanks for the information. Now let's briefly summarize what this ultimately means. Reduced outlay, data that's constantly being revised is now always up to date, and the designer doesn't have to worry about it. Full transparency all down the line. And finally, efficient reusability.
Reusability is extremely important. We don't want to be constantly starting from scratch. One of the most important factors for a product line is that these labels, which are, as you said, just labels, always look identical to one another. We really don't want to start from scratch wherever we expand the product line. We want to reuse whatever's standard for this product. The label, the brand standard, is simply copied and reused, and we save ourselves all the work of making a new layout that looks as similar as possible to the old one. And we know from experience that the similarity generally isn't that great.
I understand. Thanks for the explanation, and I'll never again say that a label is just a label. Now I know better. Let's continue on to the next topic, but first let's thank Matthias for his time. Now we come to the topic of machine building, and because there's a lot to say about it, let's go back and look. Thanks to you, Frank, I now know that there are many opportunities for using the digital twin profitably. To sum up, can we say that it saves us time in both development and production?
Everyone has instant access to all the data, so there's no longer a delay.
Resulting in error-free development processes from start to finish?
We've seen that the release is monitored. This means that I can immediately access all the information, but I can also see when things are released and can therefore be finalized.
Which then enables seamless commissioning?
Absolutely. And the twin also makes it possible to transfer all the information directly from the development to production.
And to see the product in production holistically. As we said, this is made possible by the digital twin, right?
It's the absolute core message of the digital enterprise, this combination of the digital twin, the product, and production.
This is our segue to the last topic, because we're still missing an interface. The key word is OEM, meaning machine building production. What else can you say about that?
There are many ways to reuse information, as we just saw when we defined our packaging. For example, the information that tells me how thick the foil needs to be that I use in manufacturing. I can forward the shapes that are designed to mold making for the injection molding machine. I can use these tools to produce exactly these devices. There are many opportunities for reusing this information seamlessly, and not just in terms of production as such, but also in terms of the individual machine, because it's all part of the digital twin.
And that in turn brings development and production closer together, right?
Exactly. The traditional split between development and production, where they're almost like separate units, is completely eliminated. I'm actually able to access the development information in production and always know exactly what it is that I want to produce, what the specifications are, what level of quality I have to comply with and produce for the market. Now I can know these things at the same time. In development, I can also know exactly what's available to me at a particular location and can immediately decide for this specific location that we're adapting ourselves to you, and we're delivering exactly what you need. It truly is a shared environment.
That's extremely interesting, and I'm already looking forward to our next webcast Spotlight on the Machine, when, as I said, we'll discuss our topic in more detail. You had an opportunity to ask questions during this broadcast, and I'd like to once again invite Julia from our expert team because you've sent us some very interesting questions. First question. I want to customize packaging and enable customers to design their own packaging online. How do I integrate that into my development?
Great question. I can also make all the details in the digital twin available to my consumers online and allow them to adapt them. I can integrate their graphics, integrate their own colors, or design a separate logo that's then seamlessly integrated into the twin and can be transferred to production.
Question number 2. How can I reuse design information for the production of packaging?
Also a very important question, because we're talking about a very clear environment where many companies collaborate. including the machine manufacturers who use the design details to design their own devices. In the area of packaging in particular, they need access to the digital twin that's as seamless as possible and to be able to use it for their own development processes. And of course, we also support all that completely.
And we have another question. We have several production sites. Can the recipes be appropriately adapted to the existing sites?
That too is an absolute possibility. It's very similar to the way I previously designed different versions. In this case, I can use the knowledge about the site's specific options and particular market requirements, very systematically develop separate versions of the recipe or formula, and then produce it in line with these markets.
We hope we answered your questions. Frank, thank you for your time and for the information. It was a pleasure.
Same here.
Join us for the next episode of our webcast when the topic will be Spotlight on the Machine. Until then, so long and stay curious. Ciao.